And now, let's go to a man who lives in Peterlee. And he lives near a factory that's been there for many years. His name's Rob. And late one night, after he was working there on late shift, he took his dog for a walk past the factory that's open all day and night, 24-hour shifts. I was convinced that somebody said hello to me, and I hurried home and I spoke with a mate of mine about him a few days later, and she said that when she walks down this particular track next to the old factory, something has said hello to her too. Now, I've discovered that there was a story about an ARP warden, security man kind of thing, during the war, who was struck and killed by falling masonry from that factory. He apparently used to be really friendly, and he would always say hello to anybody he met as he did his rounds to make them feel more secure during times when there was air raids or potential air raids. So, every night, walking along that track, I put my phone on record, and nothing happened for months. Then, Rob caught this. Now, this was captured at a client's home on July the 14th in 1950. The time was 1:30 in the morning when neighbours were awoken with blood-curdling screams coming from Mary Swanson's home. The police were called, and they were on the scene within 30 minutes. Reports state that the killer knew her, and police already had 4 suspects, 2 men and 1 female, that were still in Mary's home, thinking that no one had heard them due to the time of night. The killers were her own brother-in-law, his wife. Mary's body was covered from head to toe in blood. She'd been beaten and stabbed over 40 times, also sexually assaulted and then strangled to death. But Mary had put up a hell of a fight, because there were defensive wounds all over her forearms, her hands, and her pinky finger was cut off. The medical examiner found a broken-off kitchen blade jammed in her left temple. She'd had a horrific death, a death that shocked that small farming town. They were arrested and sentenced to die in the electric chair. They cried like babies, and they were terrified when given that sentence. And yet, to carry out a ghost investigation alongside a police investigation was very, very different. For in that house, you could feel death all around you. The recording says it all. They managed to capture the screams of poor Mary begging for help. Why did they do it? People claimed that her brother-in-law was so jealous that she had received everything in life after the death of her husband, and his brother should have left some of that to him. And this drove him mad, offering the other money and a new car. They all agreed to take the woman's life. They thought that the chance of cash, the farm, and a car was worth killing poor Mary for. And with Mary being dead and he being the next of kin, he would get it all if Mary was no longer around. I warn you that this EVP is full on. Some people consider it to be sick. At one point, the wife shouts out, "Kill her, quick!" Many people believe that this is a residual and intelligent haunting. And maybe now Mary can be at peace. And many, many people believe that somehow certain events repeat themselves, almost like being replayed on videotape, especially in a place that used to be benign but is now stained with the blood of the innocent. Alan Robson's Night Owls also gathers things from every corner of the United Kingdom. We've travelled all over the world. We carried out ghost hunts in desecrated cathedrals in Milan, in old plantations in New Orleans. We've been literally all over the place trying to get you the best. But this one is a particular joy because we're going to Norwich, sleepy Norwich there in East Anglia, where a girl decides she is going to go out with her tape recorder and she's going to go ghost hunting. She's going to ask the dead to speak to her. She didn't expect one to reply. A fantastic bit of work, and we've got even more coming your way right here on Scary Christmas. We got so much to share with you tonight, to share with you and the spirits living in your house, and I'm sure we've attracted their attention. Alan Robson with you, Metro Radio and across the world on the web, still broadcasting live from an ossuary filled with human bones. And how can one of Great Britain's largest submerged sandbanks slap bang in the middle of the North Sea, how the hell could that be haunted? Well, despite being 110 miles, 180 kilometres from shore, there have been numerous sightings on the Dogger Bank by seamen from across the world. It's a famous area for fishing boats chasing after the remaining cod, and there are regular sightings there of spirit. Dogger actually means cod in Dutch, and it was a fisherman from Nijmegen called De Wit who claimed to have the quintessential ghostly experience. Along with his 8 fellow crewmen, they were pulling in a fairly empty net when they heard voices yelling, "Hilfen! Hilfen!" the word for help in German. They switched off their hoist, and although it was quite a heavy sea, they could still hear voices in the sea crying out for aid. It was late in the afternoon, but visibility was excellent, and as De Wit scanned the horizon, he could see shapes in the sea about a mile away, waving frantically. They ignored the half-reined-in net and turned the boats towards them, powering away. And as they approached the figures seemed to melt away. They said it was just like a mirage in the desert. They were solid and clear until we'd almost reached them, and then they were gone. A later visit to the Dogger Bank on a fishing vessel recorded the voices of those plaintive pleadings from the figures that he could clearly see too. Jeff Quinn from Dublin was aboard a fishing boat out of Whitby in 1981 and managed to capture what most people believe is the only ever recording of this unique phenomenon. And what makes it more bizarre is that this particular area of the Dogger Bank was precisely where there'd been a major naval battle between the British fleet under Admiral Beatty and the German fleet led by Admiral Hipper back in 1915. And during the encounter, a German battleship had been badly damaged and turned to flee. And as it did, around a dozen German sailors were in the water, screaming to be picked up. The ship's captain knew if he did stay and hang around to help them, he would be sunk. So instead, he just ploughed through